Walker will preside over now.
Well, good morning. Good morning, all. We call the Legislative Committee meeting to order. Top of the morning to everyone this morning, and glad to see you all out. And we have, of course, a lobbyist, Dave Shep, here on the call with us as well this morning. Thank you for being here with us, Dave. And we're just ending week 7 of the session, and I'm sure you got much to share with us as we're about to finish up session here in another week or so. So thank you, and we'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Walker. Good morning, everybody. I know that time is short and it is a busy day in the city of Lakeland, so I will jump right into it. As Commissioner Walker mentioned, today does end week 7 of the session. There are 2 weeks remaining. There's a round of committee meetings today and then again on Monday and Tuesday morning, and then they finish up and they're on the floor for the following 2 weeks. In addition, we are expecting the budget conference to begin this weekend as well. They are very close to reaching their allocations. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the document that I sent to you last evening. So hopefully you can see my screen, and we'll just kind of run through the week 7 review. I'll move through this pretty quickly so we can leave time for questions as well. So starting off at the top here with opportunities, as everybody is aware, COVID liability protection did pass several weeks ago. I know that we have covered this in the past, but liability protection for all businesses, healthcare facilities, and local governments, that remained open during the pandemic. It was signed by the governor, it went into law immediately, and was retroactive. Since we last spoke, the affordable housing discussion has changed a little bit. The end product that they came up with was allocating $200 million per year for affordable housing programs without the possibility of future sweeps. That bill was approved by the House and the Senate, and they are waiting to send it to the governor, where he is expected to sign it. So the other portions of the dock stamp tax revenue will go towards a wastewater grant program that local governments can apply for, as well as to combat sea level rise. Those will both be funded at approximately $111 million each per year. The other big issue was the e-fairness online sales tax. That issue also passed in Senate Bill 50 this past week, or last week, and was sent to the governor beginning of this week. That will mandate collection of sales tax for online sales. The state revenue will be used to shore up the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund, which they anticipate will take about 3 to 4 years. After that time, the funds will be used to reduce the business rent tax from 5.5% to 2%. We've discussed this one for quite some time. They've been taking little nibbles of it from year to year. So this will be a major reduction in the business rent tax. Local revenues will continue to go to the local governments. It's a complicated formula that they have, but it'll be approximately $250 million will continue to go into city and county cost share programs, so that revenue will continue to flow. And then finally, the CFWI rule ratification. This was an issue that we were very concerned about at the beginning of session. However, the local utilities throughout this 5-county region and DEP reached a resolution through the hard work of Segundo Fernandez, City of Lakeland's attorney, along with Palmer Davis, to be able to reach a proposed rule that was favorable for the local utilities and will remove the automatic reduction in our water allocations. The language was put into Senate Bill 7062. It passed Appropriations Committee yesterday and is on its way to the floor. So hopefully by the end of session that will pass and we will be able to move forward with confidence knowing we have our water allocations. Another issue I wanted to bring up real quickly, I know the mayor and the commission is aware of, is a budget proposal from Senator Kelly Stargell that would provide $50 million for a new DCA courthouse to be housed here in the city of Lakeland. As you know, historically, Lakeland is the seat for the second DCA. There has been an effort through the last number of years to be able to move that over to Tampa or St. Pete. However, Senator Stargell is moving forward with a new courthouse here in Lakeland, and there are certainly more details to come on that later, but it is certainly a fluid situation with the budget conference about to begin. There are certainly still efforts wanting to move it to the coast. Moving into a couple of challenge issues. First of all, we'll start with House Bill 1. House Bill 1 is known as the anti-riot legislation. It was the governor's top priority and passed the Senate yesterday. It's a comprehensive bill that provides various definitions and enhanced penalties for offenses relating to riots, I can send you all a staff analysis that shows the breakdown of all of the different changes that are in there, but I wanted to point out a couple that have local governments paying attention and concerned. The bill does remove sovereign immunity for those cities or counties that do not provide reasonable protection during a riot that results in property damage. It also creates a budget appeal process very similar to what sheriffs have currently when their budgets are created for police departments. An appeal can be initiated by a commissioner or by the state attorney if the city reduces its local law enforcement budgets. Not a lot of clarity as to what could trigger that. That was a lot of the discussion that went forward, but the bill did pass. It is being sent to the governor, and we expect that he will sign that pretty quickly. So we can certainly get that information to Palmer and make sure that the city is prepared as this is implemented going forward. The other big issue is the broadband infrastructure legislation. These bills would artificially set and undo existing agreements relating to attachment fees for broadband infrastructure on municipal electric poles. The purpose of the bill is stated as providing rural broadband to communities that are underserved or unserved. However, the bill only addresses municipal utilities. It does not deal with co-ops, which typically cover those rural areas. We are working with the sponsors of the bill to try to reach a resolution. The Speaker of the House is now engaged as well to try to find something that actually makes sense and does not harm local government's ability to be able to set our attachment fees as well as the make-ready costs. Both bills have one committee of reference remaining. I believe the Senate bill is going to be heard on Monday in committee, and we're still waiting to find out if the House bill will be heard in its final committee stop. I know that Cindy Clemens and Joel have sent out information to each of the commissioners to reach out to our delegation members as well, and we are working with them to try to reach that resolution. A couple more real quickly. Reclaimed water. There is a bill colloquially known as the toilet to tap legislation that require all domestic wastewater utilities submit a plan by November 1 of this year to eliminate non-beneficial surface water discharges. The bill was brought up on the House floor yesterday. One of the original concerns about the bill was that it would only provide 5 years after those plans are submitted to DEP to implement any changes. The bill was amended yesterday to extend that by an additional 4 years to the year 2032. So it now goes back over to the Senate for their approval, and if they approve it, which we expect, it would then go to the governor. And then finally, mid-block crosswalks. The mid-block crosswalk legislation popped up last year in the wake of a tragedy. It has come back in a different form this year. Basically, it would require local governments and the state, to appeal to the federal government to see if you can change those mid-block crosswalks from a yellow flashing light to a red flashing light. If the federal government does not permit that, then the mid-block crosswalks would have to be removed. I forget the amount of years, but several years down the road, I believe by 2025. Obviously, there's a lot of concern over this bill as well, that it will not enhance safety, it would actually make it more dangerous for pedestrians crossing the roads. It is in its final committee in the Senate, but it was not put on the agenda. So our goal is to be able to keep this one from getting across the finish line. And with that, I know we have a limited amount of time, so I will stop and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions for David? I'm looking, I don't see any hands up, but I do have a couple of questions myself, David, I could ask. And that is, even with HB1 now going to the governor's desk for his signature, do you see any challenge with anything that I know, because we're still hearing some rumbling because of, that long day and long night, I guess, of all the meeting on yesterday. But once it's signed, it's law. I understand that. Well, what do you see any repercussions from that?
Well, you're correct. Once the governor does sign it, it does go into effect immediately. I would imagine that there will certainly be challenges to it in the legal realm, but not being a lawyer, I can't really say how those would go, but I would anticipate you will see legal challenges to the legislation.
All right, thank you. Then could you give us some more insight on home-based businesses? Because I know that was a particularly hot button item, as well. I know through the legislature session, and it's moving forward. I understand. Where does it stand with? What do we stand with that particular bill? Or do you have any knowledge about that?
Well, I am aware of it. I would need to take a quick look to see where it is in the process at this time. I believe it's in its final committee, but let me get some more clarity on that for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know it was discussed, during the advocacy committee meeting here this week with FLC as being one of the concerns they still had about the home-based business bill. So I just thought maybe we'll ask you about it. But I know it had been tempered, for lack of a better word, somewhat to make it more palatable as it was moving forward. I just wanted to ask. I see Commissioner.
I'll get that information for you right away.
And I see Commissioner Salvage has a question. Commissioner Salvage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, on this HB1, so is this an accurate scenario if this law were to pass? During budget discussions, the City Commission prioritizes, and the process, the police department does not get what it asked for, or for some reason the City Commission decided that funds that were to go to the police department instead go to the fire department or some other place. And if one commissioner votes against that, then he or she has the right to appeal the decision to the state to overturn the vote.
It is the way that it was primarily explained during discussion was that if there was an obvious reduction in the budget that would harm the public good, then the state attorney could engage. The way that the bill is written, it does state that if there is a commissioner, let me look at it here real fast. The state attorney for the judicial circuit in which the municipality is located or a member of the governing body of the municipality objects to the funding reduction may file an appeal within 30 days of the date of the tentative budget.
So I take it.
So yes, the way that it's written, an individual commissioner could file an appeal to the budget. The question is going to be, is that for a simple reduction because tax revenue has gone down citywide, or if it's for an overt situation, that's, I believe, still to be determined.
And probably litigated in the future. And I just want to say it's another example of Tallahassee encroaching on the city and the municipality's right to control its own budget. And we've all seen 6-1 votes over the years. And a lot of times it's around public safety issues. And this, as it reads now, could enable a commissioner to cripple the budget process because of a disagreement over the vote of 6 others to prioritize budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Salvage. I think Commissioner McCauley, I think you have a question. Is that correct?
I do. Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Hey, Dave, thanks for doing this. I really enjoy seeing this each week. I know it's a lot of work, but we really appreciate it. On the affordable housing budget, so they're saying they're not going to sweep it, which is great to hear. Hopefully that happens. But of the $200 million, you said $111 million are going to go to the wastewater programs?
So let me clarify that. Good question.
Okay.
So the way that they are going to break down the funding, there will be $200 million allocated for affordable housing. In addition to that, there will be $111 million for the wastewater grant program and another $111 million going to combat sea level rise, which will be resiliency programs, primarily coastal related to address flooding. Those are separate amounts that come out of the overall docked stamp tax revenue, which I believe this year is estimated to be $430 million. So that is the breakdown. And then what they put into statute is that the portion that goes to affordable housing programs cannot be swept. Now, clearly, as you well know, the law can change at any time, but that is what is going into statute now.
Awesome. Thank you. I just wanted that clarification because I thought they weren't going to sweep it, but if there was only 200 million and I was doing the math, that was
I
scary.
didn't explain that properly, so thank you for the clarification opportunity.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I see your hand is up.
Any discussion on Bright Futures, Dave?
So everything that you read going into the early part of session, that there were going to be major cuts to Bright Futures, that those have gone away. That bill has been heavily modified. In fact, I believe that their plan during the budget conference is to add more money into Bright Futures to keep it fully solvent. So there might be a minor tweak, but the major changes that were being discussed previously are not advancing.
Thank you. Unless we have any more questions or comments that need to be made, I want to again tell you, Mr. Shep, how much we appreciate your poignant time, to give us information each week as you have, because of the challenges we've all faced here this session. And thank you for those weekly reviews that you've given us and help us keep ourselves on point as to what's going on. And I appreciate that. I'm sure the commission does as well, along with the mayor. So if there's anything else you might want to share, we'll hear from you. Other than that, we'll turn it back over to the mayor.
There's a lot to be done over the next couple of weeks on the budget. There's a big decision that could come down for the city of Lakeland in the budget itself. So I'll keep you abreast of that and any assistance that's needed. But I know that y'all have a big day today as well. So thank you for your time.
And thank you again, too, as well, sir. We'll call meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Appreciate that. And certainly, David, we always appreciate your presence. All right, we have an 8:25 start on our Real Estate and Transportation Committee. And then I think I should have looked at this first. Where is our municipal boards? What time can we start that? Does anybody have that?
I think 8:15, right?
8:15, Mayor.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, great. So we will start our municipal boards and committee meeting, and our chairman is Commissioner Madden. Good morning, Commissioner Madden.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry, it's the real estate's at 8:15 and municipal boards is at 8:25.
Well, I'll continue to say good morning to you, Commissioner Madden, but a pause. And my apology for the order, because that looked to me like it was the other way around. So Real Estate and Transportation Committee, Commissioner Reed, our chairman.
Thank you and good morning. I'm calling the meeting together at 8:18 a.m. on the 16th of April. We have a full quorum of Commissioner Walker and Mayor Muntz here, as well as Mr. Salvage, Ms. Kevin, staff. We only have one order of business today. That is located at 2659 U.S. Highway 98 North. And if you
Commissioner Reed, can we get you to move your mic closer to your face? Your mic.
You're going to be addressing that for us?
Yeah.
Hang on, please. Commissioner
Kevin,
Reed, can we get you to move your mic closer to your face?
Kevin, I think we may be picking up sound from Mr. Holdner. Can we cut Mr. Holdner's audio?
I'll go ahead and get started and thought that there's still problems. One item of real estate is a proposed agreement to purchase approximately half of the parcel at 25 Highway 98. We still have a problem.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. You're kind of breaking up.
Kevin, is there anything we need to do?
You're good. Keep going now.
Mr. Holdner, but we do need Commissioner Reed to move his microphone away from his neck, closer to his face if he could. That would be great.
All right, I'll give us another shot here. The one item we have on real estate is a proposed agreement for water utilities.
Good. Yeah, I'm good. It was just his mic.
To purchase an approximately half-acre parcel at 2659 U.S. Highway 98 North. Teresa, I don't know if you can throw the map of that up on the screen. It is the map of the parcel is also in your agenda packet. You can see that it is just south of that McDonald's that's in front of the Home Depot up there on US 98 North. And the city actually has an existing lift station that's nearing the end of its life just to the north of this parcel. And they need to replace that lift station. So what they want to do is purchase the property that you see there now in blue crosshatch and construct a new lift station on that, keep the existing lift station in operation while the new construction is going on. Once the new construction is completed and that new lift station is online, they would then abandon and demolish the existing lift station. That property would still be needed for storage for things like emergency generators and that type of thing on the north side of town. Under this proposed agreement, the city would purchase this property for $145,000. The property was initially being offered for $200,000 by the property owner. The city actually had it appraised at $100,000. And after negotiations, we've arrived at a price of $145,000. Closing costs would be roughly split between the parties. And that is recommended for your approval. David Bayhan's on the meeting if you have any technical questions.
Thank you, Palmer. I've discussed it with Bill and Dave. I don't have any issues with it. Do I see anybody from my committee have any questions? It appears as there are none. Okay, I get a motion from, I got a motion for approval. I'll see a second. Mayor Muntz. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's approved. We have no other order of business. With that, we will adjourn our meeting at 8:22 a.m.
Excellent work, Commissioner Reed, and that will position us in 2 minutes for the next meeting, which will be our municipal boards and committees. So we'll stand by.
Let me see, get them to talk a little bit. I think I kept saying yes, though, to accepting the new hardware when I needed to be telling it no. Yeah. Good
Kelly,
morning.
your mic is on. Kelly, your mic is on. All right, it is 8:25, and we will begin our municipal boards and committee meetings. Chairman Madden, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. We have recommendations for 7 different boards and committees this morning, and I will entertain a motion to accept the recommendations after the reading from each board's recommendations. So our first recommendation is for the Code Enforcement Board. The recommendation is from Jim Denny to reappoint Ryan Duke to an additional term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2024 as a regular member. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any
Second.
discussion?
Yeah, I got you. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because you got to go with Bonnie Springs.
Is that right?
Commissioner Walker, were you giving some feedback?
No, I should have my mic off. Please forgive me.
Okay. All right, so we will go ahead and vote on the recommendation. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The second board is the Cra Advisory Board. There's a recommendation from Elise Drumgo to appoint Tyler Zimmerman, Chris Ann Long, and Teresa O'Brien, each to a 3-year term beginning July 20th, 2021 and ending July 19th, 2024. Mr. Zimmerman will fill the Dixieland rep seat. Ms. Long will fill the downtown rep seat, and Ms. O'Brien will fill the at-large rep seat. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Good selections.
Terrific. We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The third committee is the Public Improvement Endowment Fund. The recommendation is from Mayor Bill Mutz to appoint Dave Applin to initial term beginning April 19th, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2023. And a recommendation from Sean Scharouse to appoint Carol Phillipson to initial term beginning April 19th, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2024. Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
And a second?
A second.
Any discussion? So I'm excited to see that we have this new Public Improvement Endowment Fund. It's something we heard about at our last meeting. To watch over those funds that we're getting through the Lakeland Regional Health negotiation. And we will go ahead and vote on these recommendations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our fourth recommendation is for the Lakeland Housing Authority. There's a recommendation from Mayor Bill Mutz to appoint Dewey Chansey and Judy Moss, each to a 4-year term beginning May 1st, 2021 and ending April 30th, 2025. Mr. Chansey will fill the Northeast seat. Ms. Moss will fill the resident member at-large seat. Hina Gandhi to a 4-year term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2025. Ms. Gandhi will fill the at-large seat. Do you have a motion to accept these 3 recommendations?
Move to approve.
And a
And
second?
a second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Walker.
Ms. Madden, Commissioner Madden, I don't know if you saw my hand, but yes, I want to make sure, and I'm not on the committee, on the this particular committee, but I want to make sure that we still have, I guess, first kind of, hear me, that I look at this because we're replacing 3 people, and I think of the 3, 2 have some history. And I think it's important, that we understand, and not that we don't. I certainly would say again, not that we don't, but I want to make sure we have a good, diverse group, because majority of the people that served by LHA are people of color. And I think it's important that we make sure that when we're having this particular kind of appointments, these kind of appointments, which we had over the years, and of course it's the mayor's discretion, and I can appreciate that, but I want to make sure that we do know that we need to keep the balance as best we can as far as diversity is concerned. We have, as it currently stands now, before the we take the vote, as you always a committee, you have 3 blacks, 3 whites, and 1 black Latino. Now we're going to, if the vote approves, to 2 blacks, 3 whites, 1 white Latino, and 1 other, which I think is still a good mix. But I want to make sure we keep, keep ourselves in with an eye on the situation, because we're losing a couple of people who have history, and of course, the mix is kind of, I think is important to keep as well, because of the kind of clientele that's being served. Just want to make sure I put it out there.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Walker, and that certainly is an important balance that I take into consideration when I review all of those. And of course, as you know, we have to work from people who are applying for those committee positions to boot, and then they have to fit in their areas. But all that has been taken into consideration. Is very important to our committee as well.
Thank you both, Commissioner Walker and Mayor Muntz, for that perspective. I'm glad that will be noted by Kelly in the minutes. And going forward, we hope and encourage everyone, to participate and to put their applications in, so we can make sure we have a real rich, diverse group of applicants, from which we can select. Sounds like that's kind of the consensus here. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and approve these. Vote to approve the recommendations. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. The 5th board is the Planning and Zoning Board. Recommendation from Matthew Lyons to reappoint Lyle Phillipson to a 3-year term beginning July 16th, 2021 and ending July 15th, 2024. And Susan Seitz to a 3-year term beginning July 20th, 2021 and ending July 19th, 2024. We have a motion to approve these recommendations.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The 6th board is the Police Pension Board. Recommendation is from Sean Scharouse to appoint Michael Wright and Earl Morse, each to a 4-year term beginning June 1st, 2021 and ending May 31st, 2025. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The 7th and final recommendations are for the Zoning Board of Adjustments and Appeals. The recommendation is from Matthew Lyons to appoint Gregory Kent to a 3-year term beginning April 19th, 2021 and ending April 18th, 2024 as a regular member, and to reappoint Kent Culberson to a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2024 as a regular member. We have a motion to accept these recommendations.
So moved.
And a second. Yes, second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That completes our 7 recommendations for the various boards. I do want to reiterate Commissioner Walker's comments and also the mayor's that, our opportunity to nominate and approve members are as good as our pool of applicants. And so we encourage everyone to apply, go on our website and look at the variety of things that are open. And if you don't see the one that you're interested in, just fill out an application anyway, because it's great to have that participation and get involved in the city on one of our boards and committees. Unless there's any other business for this committee, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned at 8:35.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Madden, and thank you all 3 committees this morning for your effectiveness. We are now going to move to our agenda study because we're past the 8:30 mark. As you'll take a look at it, we have our original presentation from LPD on Community Service Division and the School Resource Officer update from our chief, and then a recognition of our K-9 unit. And that's always a fun thing to be able to do as well. We have no proclamations for this meeting, and then we have the committee reports that we'll do. And then that brings us to the consent agenda, which includes the Utility Committee meeting and our own minutes, as well as 2 items under City Manager. So let's move to that 5B1 and see if we want to keep that on consent.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. The first item from the City Manager's section for consideration on consent is item, as was stated, item B. It is a recommendation regarding a change order to Hubbard Construction contract for new service road at Lakeland Linder International Airport. And let me also pause and preface to say that both of the items under consideration for consent are projects that the community and the City Commission have seen before. And so that was part of the thought process on moving them to consent. They are change orders related to those ongoing existing projects. The Lakeland Linder International Airport entered into a land lease agreement to accommodate a second fixed-base operator in October 2020. As the second FBO development commences, the airport is seeking to construct a new internal service road. This realignment is required due to the FBO development, which is east of Taxiway G, north of Taxiway A, and south of the North Aprons area. With the new development, the existing perimeter non-movement access to the west is essentially terminated and must be restored for tenants to retain the same movement they had prior to the new FBO development. The airport has an existing construction contract in place with Hubbard Construction for the rehabilitation and reconstruction of taxiways A, B, and C. The airport has negotiated a change order with Hubbard for the pavement work required to construct the new service road in the amount of $536,680, comprised of line items and unit costs included in the current contract and negotiated unit costs for other pavement items. The change order has been reviewed by staff and also one of the airport's engineering firms. It is recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to enter the change order with Hubbard Construction as presented for the construction of the new service road. It's also recommended that the City Commission authorize an increase in estimated revenues in the Airport Capital Fund in the amount of $70,689, along with a corresponding appropriation in the amount of $536,680 in the Airport Capital Fund. And that would be from the following. First, an issuance of an internal loan that is currently budgeted in FY21 for another capital project, and also from the airport's operating surplus fund in the amount of $465,991. That completes my presentation, and we do have Mr. Conrad on the call if there are any questions.
Are there any questions from commissioners? I don't see any, but I can't see all the commissioners on. Oh, Commissioner Selvage.
Just a question, Sean. I don't see any problem with this, but for that amount of money, is it prudent to put it on consent? That's my only question. How much more are we talking about? Did I misunderstand that?
Commissioner, are you asking for the amounts again?
And the change order
would be in the amount of $536,680.
Okay, so I'm just questioning, Mayor, if that $500,000 should be placed on consent.
What's the preference of commissioners? Any other comments on that? I think probably the inevitability that it did I see a hand, Commissioner McCarley? Go ahead.
I just, as Sean, Mr. Sherrill stated a little while ago, this is something that's been ongoing that I think we have had on the public agenda. So, I'm okay with keeping it on consent, but I'm up for discussion too.
Any other comments by commissioners? All right. then I think if it's a preference, let's do a thumbs up. Leave it on consent. Okay, we will. And I appreciate the commission, the cautioning Commissioner Selvage, because it is a great deal of money. And we have the important thing, I think, for citizens to know is that it certainly comes out of the operating fund surplus. So we're not creating any, we have the money set aside for this. And this is part of the reason we have a surplus and need to have them, because of these unanticipated things. All right, next item, sir.
The second item that we have for consideration under consent, again, similar to the first, although they are, to Commissioner Selvage's point, large amounts. Again, the thought was certainly that they're just projects that we've all covered and been aware of, and staff is certainly happy to go with the commission's desire for any of these. The recommendation on this item is again for a change order with Register Construction for soffit repairs and painting at 3131 Flight Line Drive at Lakeland Linder International Airport. The airport issued a bid number 1064 on February 5th, 2021 for the soffit replacement and exterior painting of the multiple tenant hangar at that location. It's on the south side of the airport. The work consists of removing all damaged and rusted existing soffit and replacement with new soffit, and the priming and painting of the entire building, including the exterior walls, hangar doors, and the soffit. The airport received only one bid in the amount of $552,770. The bid was reviewed by staff and our engineering firm and was determined to be excessive, as the bid was approximately $200,000 over the budget and estimates. After discussion with purchasing, the bid was canceled on April 2nd due to the budgetary concerns. The airport was authorized to negotiate with Register Construction, who is presently under a contract to complete the NOAA expansion. The airport requested Register to review the bid requirements and provide the cost to complete the work outlined in the bid. All soffit will be new. Structural fascia and other materials will be changed out if they are damaged or rusted, and will be changed out with the same size members. The entire exterior facility will be painted. Register provided a not to exceed cost of $355,637 to complete the soffit work and painting, which is $197,000 lower than the initial bid cost that I referenced. The not to exceed cost will also protect the airport from any unforeseen expenses related to those repairs as well. The proposal submitted by Register has been reviewed by staff and the engineering firm that we work with, and is in line with the estimated cost to provide these services. So it is recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to enter a change order with Register Construction Company in the amount of $355,637 for the repairs that have been described at 3131 Flight Line Drive. And then it is also recommended that the City Commission authorize corresponding appropriation in that amount in the airport capital fund that would be funded out of the airport's operating fund surplus. That completes my presentation. And again, Mr. Conrad is with us if there are any questions.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. And Gene or Sean, what led to the change order on this one? I didn't see that, or I didn't get that from the summary.
Good morning. This is actually, it's the building that's next to, the larger airside facility. And this isn't a change order. This is just, we're change ordering into Register's contract, but this is work we're performing on the building that's next to them, and work that we've been planning and trying to get done for actually several years. And so since Register's already here and we have a contract with them for similar type items, obviously, with the cost reduction from the original bid that I believe we received from Semco, they're able to do it for obviously much less and perform the work and get it done for us.
Okay, thank you, Gene. That's helpful. I was interpreting it as an existing project that there was a change to the scope. So thank you. That's helpful.
Yes, sir.
Other questions by commissioners? All right. The next consent item is under finance.
Mayor, I think Commissioner Walker.
Commissioner Walker.
I'm sorry, I am blind I cannot, on this particular screen, and I can't get beyond Commissioner Selvage on my view. So thank you for bringing that up if I missed someone. Commissioner Walker, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We won't confess that you're blind. We won't go that far. But anyway, Gene, any reason, Mr. Conrad, the vast difference? You know, I think it was a couple $100,000 difference between registers, I guess, performer, as far as what they think the work could be done for versus the one bid we did get. Is it because register's already there, or is just that kind of a situation?
Well, I think that's some of it, but also I just think the bid was extremely high, and the engineer's estimate, that we received from this when they, did the design work and all that was closer to, I think it was between 250 to 300,000. So the $500,000 number was just no go for us, and we just didn't have the funds available to do it. So, once that happened, we talked to purchasing, asked them if we could work with Register since they're already here under contract. And they, evaluated the plans and, evaluated the costs, and they came in obviously much lower. So, that's just, I don't know how obviously Simcoe is bidding their stuff, and if it was higher or things that maybe they didn't understand and didn't ask questions for. But this is, obviously the number that Register came back for, and obviously they do a great job. And, it's a not to exceed as well. So it does provide protection. So if there's some unforeseen things, they're going to be responsible for those things. So we're not coming back with another change order.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that. We then move to utility or to Finance Director 7A on the appropriation and increase in estimated revenues.
Good morning. We have one appropriation request. It is from the Fleet Management Vehicle Replacement Fund. Fleet Management and Lakeland Electric Delivery are requesting the early replacement of a 2015 All-Tech digger derrick used to install power poles. The equipment's hydraulic control has become problematic. The cost of replacement vehicle is $335,000. The current replacement balance, including anticipated auction revenue for this equipment, is $404,507, which is more than adequate to cover its replacement. Therefore, it is requested that the City Commission authorize an appropriation and increase in estimated revenues from the unappropriated surplus in the Fleet Management Vehicle Replacement Fund of $335,000 for the early replacement of a derrick digger for Lakeland Electric Energy Delivery.
All right. Is there any objection to leaving that on consent? All right. And we will continue to do so, bringing us to utility C1.
Good morning. The first item that we have on the consent agenda is an agreement with Alpine Power Systems. This is for the replacement of the combustion turbine battery that's contained in Unit 5. That battery is used to power the unit in terms of being able to gradually bring the unit to a stop if there's a loss of power. This is in protection to prevent damage to the turbine and the bearings. The existing battery that we have, the cells can't maintain the proper voltage. It's over 15 years old, and the average lifespan of these batteries is approximately 15 years. So it's in need of replacement. To that end, staff went out through the purchasing department and was able to procure services with Alpine through the GSA federal government contract. The total purchase price of this is $81,380. It's included in Lakeland Electric's FY21 budget. The installation of this will occur during Unit 5's fall outage. Alpine will be removing the old battery, installing the new battery, and also conducting testing on it. That's all the services that are included in that.
Any questions on that from commissioners? All right, pretty straightforward. Let's go to the second one, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm missing someone. All right, go ahead. Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you. Ramona, or if someone from Lakeland Electric is on the call, I was just curious, so if it's replaced in the fall, if we currently have batteries that can't maintain the proper voltage, is there any risk to the unit, any significant damage of, during that time between now and the fall when it's replaced?
Okay, I think David Holdner can speak specifically to that question. I think he's on the line.
David, are you?
He's muted.
Try again unmuting, sir.
I was unmuting off my phone, not my computer. I messed up. Sorry. Commissioner McLeod, we do monthly and quarterly testing on these here batteries, and we noticed the trend that we're starting to see the batteries degrade, and they're to the point of if we don't act to replace them, they will fail and put us in jeopardy. Right now, we are not at jeopardy. We're at the point that they're showing the signs, and so based upon our NERC required testing and what we do to maintain them, that's how we came across the situation to be proactive, so we don't have the problem. If the batteries were to fail, the subsequent failure of the turbine would exceed several $100,000 to do the repair, not to mention a month and a half long outage duration. So that's how we're trying to do it.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Any other questions by commissioners? Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And then item 2.
Yes, the second item that we have is simply an approval of a ranking of surveying firms and authority to negotiate a LiDAR services agreement with a top ranked firm. This LiDAR services technology is going to be able to provide Lakeland Electric with detailed images, 3D images that captures of poles, the transmission lines and attachments, and it's specifically going to be used to survey LE's 230 kV transmission lines and 269 kV lines. This was competitively solicited through the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act. 17 firms responded. After review of the selection committee, 5 top firms were ranked in the order that you see there, and GPI Geospatial out of Tampa, Florida was selected, or top ranked firm. We are asking for authority now for staff to go ahead and negotiate a final agreement with GPI Geospatial. Once we are successful in negotiating that agreement would come back to you for final approval. So this is just an approval of the ranking of the firms.
Any questions by commissioners on this? All right, I think that one sustains well. Thank you very much for going through those. No objection to keeping that on as well. All right, that will bring us back to page 1. We will have a request to appear from John Wing regarding solar power, and which he has done. And actually, I think he was in our last meeting interested in doing that at the end and wasn't able to stay. We have no equalization hearing, so that brings us to public hearings, ordinances A1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second reading of an ordinance modifying the city's investment policy for long-term funds that you heard about at a finance committee meeting a few weeks ago. It's small tweaks to the investment allocations with different investment vehicles. And it also adds the public improvement endowment fund to the funds that will be invested pursuant to this policy. As you know, the public improvement endowment fund will include $250 million from the prepayment of the hospital lease.
Any questions for City Attorney Davis? All right, next item, sir, under P1.
The next item is a resolution approving a brownfield area at the site of the Blue Sky Affordable Housing Development up off of Griffin Road. Teresa, can you pull the map up of this to show the location? What this will do is, just first of all, they are proceeding pursuant to a Florida statute that allows you to have an area declared a brownfield area if there's contamination on the property or the perception of contamination on the property, and they're proceeding under that perception prong of the statute. This used to be, and maybe still has, some orange trees and orange groves on it where pesticides were applied, so they're proceeding under that approach. The designation of this as a brownfield area will the primary benefit of that is it will allow the developer to obtain a sales tax exemption for the purchase of building materials to redevelop the site. It would only be the state's portion of the sales tax, not the local sales tax portion. So the city will be held harmless from any kind of tax break that they get as a result of this being declared a brownfield area. By the statute, this is the first of 2 public hearings on this, so you'll see this again on, I believe it's May 3rd, would be the second reading of this. Jared worked with on this, so he can answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions by commissioners on this one? Seeing none, let's go to item C1.
All right, item C1 is the continuation of the cell tower appeal up at 1800 off of 1800 Hardin Boulevard, which is the executive cleaner site there on the east side of Hardin between Ariana and Beacon. As you know, the Planning and Zoning Board denied a conditional use application to construct a 110-foot tall cell tower on this property by a vote of 4-2. And the attorney for the cell tower owner has exercised their right under our land development code to appeal that Planning and Zoning Board decision to the City Commission under the process, the appeal process established in the land development code. It's a 2-step process. The applicant has to first show that the Planning and Zoning Board committed error in their decision to deny this application. And if you look at the memo, there are 5 different grounds, possible grounds for appeal to the City Commission. The applicant is not alleging a failure of due process or a lack of substantial competent evidence. They are focusing on the Federal Telecommunications Act and saying that the Planning and Zoning Board failed to apply regulations correctly, specifically the Telecommunications Act, alleging that because of significant gaps in coverage in this area, the Planning and Zoning Board's denial creates an effective prohibition of cell tower service in this area, and therefore the Planning and Zoning Board made a mistake. Procedurally, what you'll need to do is listen to the applicant and determine whether or not the Planning and Zoning Board made a mistake. If you find that they did not, then it would be appropriate to deny the appeal and affirm the Planning and Zoning Board's denial. And that would be the end of the process. If you find that the Planning and Zoning Board did commit error, then you would tee this up for a full-blown hearing. All the evidence would come in, and then you'd make a decision after that. You can, of course, continue that to another date for good cause if that's necessary. I'd rather limit discussion on the merits of this case today and reserve that for the hearing on Monday. I'm sure this will be a contested case with potential for litigation. That's I think enough for me to say. I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Well, I think it's wise for us to follow your lead on this and do it as one hearing unless there's something specific that someone has to round out the explanation.
Just quickly, the applicant, we had originally discussed 45 minutes with the applicant. The applicant feels like they may need a little bit more time than that, so I think we need to be a little bit flexible. It is a complicated issue as to coverage issues. It may take a little bit more than 45 minutes for the applicant to present why they think the Planning and Zoning Board was in error.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Walker.
I just want to make sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure, Mr. Palmer Davis, we're only hearing just the information that's regarding why why I guess the denial is not should not have been taken, and it was regarding the, I guess you call it the FCC's kind of act, that particular situation that that they will come before us and share with us. That's the only thing we're having to hear, nothing else. Is that correct?
Well, initially, that's all you'll hear. If you find that the Planning and Zoning Board incorrectly applied the Telecommunications Act's requirements, then then at that point, you would move into a full-blown hearing and fully hear the case. So it's a two-step process, potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Selvage.
Following up on Commissioner Walker's comments, so we are expected to vote with one of those three options without hearing from the staff on why they recommended disapproval?
No, I think that as a matter of background, staff can present, some information about the site and why they recommended denial. Just to give you context, and then hear from the applicant as to the more technical argument that they're going to make. So I think it's it.
Go ahead.
No, I think that you do need to get some context from staff to understand the case. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, and regarding legal claims by the appellant, will you be ready to guide us through the legal questions regarding what they're claiming?
Yes, we'll respond to that. For now, though, just would ask that you keep an open mind and listen to the arguments that you'll hear on Monday.
Agreed.
And maybe we could open City Attorney Davis with our staff's original position so that's kind of sets the context for us and then continue going forward. I think that would be beneficial.
I think that'll make things more meaningful to you.
Commissioner McLeod, did you have a question?
Yeah.
That was the same point as yours and Commissioner Selvage, Mayor, so it's been addressed. Thank you.
You're all mute, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us back to City Manager, item 5A, and thank you very much for taking us through that, City Attorney Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may, after the two other items that I have under the city manager's section, I've also got a verbal that I would like to make to the commission. The first item for presentation is a recommendation regarding an FAA grant agreement for airport funding through the Airport Coronavirus Relief Grant Program. Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act was signed into law on December 27, 2020, and includes nearly $2 billion in funds to be awarded as economic relief to eligible U.S. airports and eligible concessions at those airports to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus disease, COVID-19 pandemic. To distribute these funds, the Federal Aviation Administration has established the Airport Coronavirus Response Grant Program. The FAA will make grants to all airports that are part of the National Airport System, including all commercial service airports, all reliever airports, and some public-owned general aviation airports. Through the Coronavirus Act, the Lakeland International Airport received the grant offer of $91,162. The FAA agrees to pay 100% of allowable cost related to operations, personnel, cleaning, sanitization, janitorial services, combating the spread of pathogens at the airport, and debt service payments. The grant amount was derived by a legislative formula. The airport intends to use the funds toward its operational expenses such as payroll and other operating costs or payment of debt service that is related. The grant requires the governing body to authorize the execution of the grant, and certification from the sponsoring agency's attorney must be completed by no later than May 6, 2021. So it is recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to enter the grant agreement with the FAA, and it's recommended that the City Commission authorize an increase in estimated FAA grant revenues in the amount presented. No additional appropriations are required to accommodate this request.
Are there any questions on this at all? All right, sir, then the next last unconsented item.
Okay, that would be item D. Item D is a recommendation regarding an award of bid number 1005 to QGS Development. Also authorized the mayor to execute a change order for a water and force main relocation and also authorizing the corresponding appropriations and increases in estimated revenues for the Lakeland Park Drive Connector project. The Lakeland Park Drive Connector is a half-mile project that will connect Lakeland Park Drive with Carpenter's Way. That's a project that we've talked about and presented before. This agenda item contains 3 parts for this project. The first part is regarding the award of bid number 1005 for the project's construction. The city's purchasing division advertised for construction bids beginning December 3rd, 2020. And 5 bids were received on February 9th, 2021. One of our contracted engineers, civil serve, and city staff have evaluated the bids and are recommending the award of the bid to QGS Development Incorporation in the amount of $6,309,597.76. The city's purchasing division published a letter of intent to award on March 9th, 2021. The protest period has ended without a protest being filed. So that's part 1 of this agenda item. Part 2 is is to authorize the appropriate city officials to execute a change order for the water and force main relocation needed for this project. The Water Utilities Department has about 140 linear feet of new water pipeline and about 135 linear feet of new force main pipe to install because of their existing facilities conflicting with the new roadway. Water Utilities has determined that they do not have the resources to complete the work within the time needed to clear the project for the road contractor and maintain its schedule. Public Works has requested a proposal from QGS to relocate the water main and force main. QGS has presented a proposal in the amount of $122,134.25. One of the city's contracted engineers and city staff have reviewed the proposal and find it satisfactory. The work is funded in the Water Utilities Capital Improvement Fund. So if I may, let me stop there before I move on to the third part, because I know we had an item recently that was similar, and so I want to address what some of the questions may be based on that past discussion. I will tell you that when staff evaluated what it would cost for staff to complete this work, we conservatively estimated that it would be about $114,000. And again, that was a conservative estimate. It could easily be higher than that. So that gives you some idea of the difference between what we would be paying to have this work done for, and compared to what staff could do it for. And again, with the 114 conservative, we do believe the $122,000 figure is about even to what our costs would be. And you know what happens on these projects is they're very time sensitive based on the contractor for the construction. And so, you know, if city staff were not to be able to meet the timeline that's needed, we could potentially have to pay liquidated damages if the project were to be delayed because of staff doing that work. And, you know, I'll just tell you, we're inundated with work right now. There's an awful lot of work going on by staff, and a lot of projects like this one that have been really kind of on the shelf and dormant for many years, but because of some of the funding that's becoming available from the federal government and from the state, a lot of these projects are now being taken off the shelf and advanced. And so, you know, staff's working as hard as we can to keep up, but there's just an awful lot of work being done right now. So on a project like this, where we're dealing with the contractor's timeline, and if we delay, it could result in liquidated damages. It's probably best at this time that we use this type of contracted service. So with that, I'll move on to part 3. Part 3 is to address the funding variance for the project. The bids were received are more than is budgeted for the project. We have more than a $2 million price increase for the Lakeland Park Drive Connector project. And so to cover the deficit, it is recommended that we, first of all, postpone funding for collector sidewalk projects in FY23 and 25 and move them to FY26 and 28. We also would suggest appropriating $500,000 from Transportation District 1 impact fees immediately, and then borrow the remaining $1,600,000 in FY 2022 from an internal loan fund through the annual budget process. The debt service of that amount of the internal loan would be paid back from Transportation District 1 impact fees between FY 22 and FY 25 via the annual budget process. So it is recommended that the City Commission approve the award of bid number 1005 to QGS Development as presented. Also authorize the appropriate city officials to execute the change order for the water and force main relocation on behalf of the city that I discussed. And finally, authorize the appropriation and increase in estimated revenues of $500,000 from the Transportation District 1 Impact Fee Fund to the Transportation Fund to assist the FY 21 funding of this project. That completes staff's presentation. We'll stand for any questions, and Craig James is available as well to assist.
Mr. James, I have an initial question, which is on the collector sidewalk delay timing. Is that because we can really anticipate that would be a low traffic utilization short term?
Well, it's more or less because of we're wanting to pay this out of transportation impact fees. We had earmarked $400,000 in both those outer years. And then as we approach those years, we would identify specific projects that we'd spend that money on. And in order for the cash flows to work for the debt service on the internal loan, we needed to move those out. So we don't have a specific project identified for that money at this date.
My concern really relates back to Vision Zero and fatalities, and this is a new corridor and walkways that protect people from walking too close to the edge of the road and not knowing what that pedestrian traffic looks like. It would seem reasonable to think that you're going from to two areas, that would be an easy way to communicate, to travel between those two areas. So that's my only question, is that maybe if you could make a comment on that.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I misunderstood your initial question. We are building the trail on the north side of the roadway that will connect with the sidewalks on Carpenter's Way and with the existing sidewalk on Lakeland Park Drive. So there will be a pedestrian connection with this project. We haven't eliminated any elements.
Excellent. Any other questions by commissioners? Commissioner Selvage.
Thank you, sir. Sean, I've heard that the golf course is going to be undergoing some changes and become a development piece of property. Will that affect at all our planning and what happens with this connector?
I'm not aware of anything related to the private golf course.
Okay. All right. And I can't confirm that.
I would admit, Greg, do you know of anything?
I haven't heard of anything. I know probably 5 or 6 years ago, there was some, I think, discussions or feelers out, but then haven't heard anything recent. It would not impact our roadway, as we've purchased the land and we've also acquired the easement, so we're good there.
Okay, well, that was my question. Thank you, Greg.
In full disclosure, Commissioner Selvage, I think there is a developer that is interested in trying to see if there's a sentiment for, and so that's under the normal play of life. So we'll see where they come out on that pursuit. Any other questions by Commissioner? Yes, sir. Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Walker, if you just shout out like that, that's perfect, because I don't have you. Go ahead, Commissioner Walker.
All right, thank you. Now, I want to make sure I understood what Mr. James was sharing after Mr. Sherrouse had made his presentation. Now, funding for sidewalks and that kind of thing, not particularly relating to this particular project itself, but I thought you pushed back, you said funds going to be pushed back from 22, 23, or 23 to 25, maybe 26, if I heard that, for some addition, for some sidewalks funding that may be already in the pipeline. Am I saying that correct?
You're correct, Commissioner. What we had done is typically we will earmark a lump sum of money in outer years that as we approach those years, we will determine specific projects to spend that money on. So we had earmarked $400,000 out in 2023 and in 2025 for those future sidewalk projects. And what we're doing is pushing those out 2 additional years. In this particular instance, that money was impact fee money, and that's what we were wanting to use to pay back the internal loan. As it stands right now, we have, as you're probably aware, many lap projects involving sidewalks as well as path projects. And we are actually have a backlog right now at construction and maintenance. So in some regard, this pushing out 2 years may help us catch up with our workflow coming out of our engineering division, as well as consultant work that our own forces would be constructing.
So there would not be any neglect, for lack of a better word, on what we need to do for sidewalks, trails, whatever, with funding being pushed back, as you say. That would not, we would still be able to do or support whatever particular need there may be or may arise. Am I hearing that correct as well?
Yes, we will. And we have I think if you compare our sidewalk and path program with other municipalities and stuff, we have a pretty robust program between new infrastructure coming online as well as the amount that we're maintaining and the level that we maintain those at. So we feel comfortable at this point that we're not going to create any gaps or anything like that by pushing the money out 2 years.
Well, that was the main concern. We're not going to have any challenges or gaps, as you call it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Any other commissioners on this? All right, sir. And then your
Commissioner Reed's waving.
Oh, Commissioner Reed, you have to shout.
Thank you. I'll just reserve my questions for Monday. It's, I'd like to hear why the costs have gone up dramatically, but I don't need to hear it today.
All right, sir. Thank you. Then your verbal, City Manager Sherrouse.
Yes, this is just notification to the commission regarding our upcoming budget retreat, which we have scheduled on your calendars and noticed for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. I just kind of wanted to inform the commission that for the retreat and the budgetary process, I am making some changes based on comments that I have heard commissioners make, to me in one-on-ones and also throughout the interview process when we were seeking a city manager. And so I will on Tuesday explain what those changes are, which will, I believe, assist in streamlining the process, especially for this first budgetary workshop. And so I tell you that just because when we have worked on laying out what the agenda looks like and estimating how much time we will need on each section of the agenda, we believe we may likely complete that retreat during the day on Tuesday with a full day on Tuesday, and we will likely not need time on Wednesday. If we do need time on Wednesday, depending on how the discussions and the process goes on Tuesday, it would certainly probably only be just a little time Wednesday morning. So I just tell you that for your schedules, we have reserved just as a placeholder the time on Wednesday, but we believe we will probably complete the retreat on Tuesday. So just to you as information. Thank you.
That is excellent to know, sir. Any comments or questions? All right. That brings us then back to City Attorney, and we're looking at 6A1, Ordinances First Reading.
Thank you. One ordinance for first reading, adding a requirement for relating to dental amalgam disposal for local dentist offices. Jared worked on this with water utilities, and we'll walk you through that.
Thank you, Palmer. This is a proposed ordinance for your consideration, and as part of our MPDS permit requirements with the DEP, we are required to adopt certain pre-treatment standards that they promulgate as part of their rulemaking. And back in 2016, the EPA adopted this rule that requires dental offices to install dental amalgam separators. It was part of a finding where they determined that the discharge of dental amalgam is the largest source of mercury in municipal sewage treatment systems. So pursuant to the EPA's authorities under the Clean Water Act, they adopted the rule in June 14 of 2017, but they delayed compliance with the rule until the summer of 2020. The EPA or the DEP and state level has also adopted the rule, and as the City of Lakeland is the control authority under the Clean Water Act, we are required to adopt this rule as well. And so it's basically it requires the dental offices to install the amalgam separator and then to submit a one-time compliance report to the to our water utility department for verification of compliance. And we're recommending that the City Commission adopt this ordinance. And I believe we have Rick Reedy on the line from the water utility if there are any questions of a technical nature or about how this program is going to be administered.
Are there any questions?
I think it bears mentioning that and Rick can confirm this, that all dental offices in Lakeland have already installed these separators. So this is really more of a procedural matter of filing reports with the city's water department. So Rick, can you confirm that?
I believe, if not all, most have. I know all new dental offices are required to have them when they build out. And I believe most of the ones that we have gotten reports back from have them installed.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rick, for that. This is an encouragement to brush well and floss often. Any other comments? All right, let's go to B1.
B1 is a resolution, you've seen plenty of these, subordinating the city's easement interests on some property on US 98 South. We have a lift station and some water lines on this property that is proposed for development as a Mazda dealership. It's across from Polk State. I believe there's an apartment complex or townhomes directly across from Polk State. And the site of this proposed Mazda dealership would be just south of that on the west side of 98 South. So as part of the development of that property, the DOT required the owner developer to dedicate some additional right-of-way that contains our easements. And as always, when that happens, they require the city to subordinate its easement interests. In exchange for doing so, though, the DOT agrees that if they ever require us to move our facilities, they will pay the cost of that. So that's what that's about.
Questions by commissioners? Next item.
The next item is something that we do every 3 or 4 years. There's pretty much an ongoing process to evaluate vulnerabilities from natural and man-made disasters in Polk County and identify projects to mitigate those vulnerabilities. And the Polk County Local Mitigation Strategy Group has developed an update to their ongoing plan that identifies the vulnerabilities and potential projects to mitigate those. I believe Mike Williams is on the line and can give you more information if you would like on that endeavor.
Are there any questions by commissioners? Mike, thanks for being with us. Next item.
The next item is a resolution extending a grant agreement with FDOT for the construction of improvements to Taxiway E at the airport. This project has been designed, the design stage has been completed, and it's out to bid for the construction phase. The DOT is waiting for some FAA grant funds, so is asking that we simply extend the deadline for completion of this project to December 31st of 2022 to allow those FAA funds to become available.
Any questions on this item?
I believe Commissioner Reed has a question.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. Just have Gene bring some maps for the meeting on Monday, so we can see where A, B, C, and D are, as well as E. Thank you.
All right. Item 5.
Next item is somewhat similar. It's another FDOT grant agreement. This is for improvements to taxiways A, B, and C. And the FDOT is asking that that the deadline for completion of the construction of these improvements be extended to December 31st, 2022. So that is also being recommended for your approval.
And again, the maps would apply. Any other questions? All right, item 5.
Then item 5 is simply formalizing the discussion relating to the change of meeting times at City Commission. It's a resolution that will formally establish the meeting times for the City Commission meetings as 11 a.m. 9 a.m. on the first and third Mondays of each month. And the Utility Committee meetings would be 11 a.m. on the Friday preceding the first Monday of each month, all beginning with the first meetings for those two entities in June.
Any questions on that? Seeing no hesitations in that forward motion, that brings us to item C1.
Yes, this is an agreement with Florida Disaster Consulting, LLC. This is for FEMA Public Assistant Grant Management Services and will help the city meet the compliance requirements to obtain and try to maximize full reimbursement from FEMA for any eligible recovery costs that we can obtain. As you're aware, there's an extensive documentation required now for reimbursement from FEMA. Accordingly, the city's purchasing department issued a request for proposal soliciting qualified firms for this. We had 4 responses to the city's RFP, and upon evaluation of the firm, city staff actually selected Florida Disaster Consulting LLC, which is a local Lakeland company and a full-service disaster management company. They specialize in cost recovery, debris monitoring, training, intergovernmental relations. They have been in business for the last 12 years and have extensive experience recovering a significant amount of funds for FEMA reimbursements. They also specialize in a number of other areas that include federal highway emergency relief, natural resource conservation service, community development block grants, hazard mitigation grant funding, and CARES Act funding as well. Pursuant to the agreement, the FTC will be assisting the city in identifying potential reimbursement type projects. They'll conduct meetings with city, state, and FEMA staff, perform site visits, collect and prepare all the necessary documentation for reimbursement, draft scopes of work, and also work with the city and the Florida Division of Emergency Management. This is a 3-year contract. The term would be effective May 1st, 2021 upon City Commission approval. There is also an additional 5-year option of renewal contained in the agreement. The actual agreement itself will be subject to written task orders for work performed. So what you have here is a base agreement with FDC. The total costs of the services are set in accordance with the schedule that's contained in the contract in terms of hourly wages. The majority of the costs that the city will incur as a result of having FDC perform services pursuant to this agreement are considered direct administrative costs, and those are costs that are approximately 75% reimbursable of the federal share. The other remaining 25% would be shared 12.5% each with the city and state chipping in. So essentially what we're looking at is a maximum cost share for the city of 12.5% of the total cost charged by FTC.
Any questions by commissioners or comments? All right, thank you. Next item.
The next item is a significant contract relating to the West Folklore, Florida Aquifer Wellfield project. That's an implementation agreement between the city, Polk County, and various different municipalities within Polk County to develop this project. As you heard at the workshop in early March, even though the CFWI issue has been resolved for now, there's still a recommendation that we move forward with this project, not only because of planning for the 2038 expiration of our current permit, but also there's, even though CFWI is dead for now, we certainly expect it to come back in some form in the years to come. What this agreement will do is provide for the development of this Lower Florida and Wellfield project that will ultimately yield 10 million gallons per day at the 2045 build out. The parties will share the cost of this in accordance with the water allocation table that you see in the agenda memo, with Lakeland being by far the largest participant in this project at 81.7%. A project board will be set up to govern this project, and the votes of the various different jurisdictions will be based on their water allotment percentages. So Lakeland will clearly have a large majority of the votes on the decisions being made by this project board. The way this is structured is, as you heard at the workshop, the parties want to see what this is going to look like and what the costs are, and have some off ramps in case things are not what we anticipate. So the project board will first hire engineers to design this to a 60% stage. Once the 60% plans for the project are developed, then all the project participants will take a look at that. And if they don't like what they see, they have the option at that point to withdraw from the project. They would just simply be responsible for any of their proportionate share of the cost to develop the 60% plans, would not be responsible for any additional cost beyond that point. If the party does not withdraw at that stage, then they become liable for development of the 100% plans as well as the construction costs of the project. With respect to those costs, right now it is estimated that the cost to develop the 60% plans for the project will be a little bit over $6 million. And Lakeland's share of that will be $5 million before funding by SwiftMud. SwiftMud, under a grant that we hope to get, will provide 50% funding for those costs once we begin construction of the project. If we don't commence construction, then we would be responsible for the full design costs of $5 million for those plans. The estimated construction costs for the project at this moment are $171 million. Lakeland's share of that would be $70 million. That would be after receiving a 50% grant from SwiftMud. So it's important that we know where we stand with that SwiftMud grant, because that's going to significantly affect the cost that the city incurs. So the implementation agreement is subject to and conditioned upon receiving a 50% grant from SwiftMud. So if we do not get that grant, then the agreement does not go into effect unless we decide to go forward and amend the agreement. So that SwiftMud will cover 50% of the costs, and the plan to cover the remaining portion of these significant costs are twofold. One, the PRWC will be applying for a Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act loan. You've heard the term WIFIA, a WIFIA loan through the EPA. That's going to be a low interest loan. It's good terms in that we do not have to pay interest on any portion of that loan that we do not draw down and use. So we can secure the funds going forward, but do not have to pay interest on anything other than what we've expended. So that is anticipated to cover an additional 48% of the project costs, and then the remaining 2% would more than likely be covered through a state revolving fund loan through the state DEP. It is anticipated that we're going to develop this project in phases, 2.5 MGDs per each phase, and we think that the first stage will be completed and online by 2027 to the tune of 2.5 MGDs that will be split between the parties. Bill Anderson's on the meeting if you have any technical questions, and I'll try to answer any questions as well.
All right, Commissioner Madden.
And thank you, City Attorney Davis. So for me, when I think about all of the work on the PRWC, I certainly admire every municipal, participant. It seems to me that when we calculate, it's easy to say that Lakeland is the largest municipality, at the table right now, and certainly has the most number of residents. But when you think about growth projections out to 2027 to 2038 and beyond, I'm thinking in my mind, all of that rural area in the other towns, they actually have more growth in the future than we do, projected because of their opportunity to develop the rural areas. So I hope that in the calculations for how much we're participating, when I look at numbers like we're in this, at 60% or, the largest contributor to the project, that's taken into consideration, that even though we have the largest number of citizens currently, our growth projections as a percentage of our population are much smaller than the growth projections for some of the smaller municipalities who might have radical growth filling up all of their rural land, and they'll be the folks who need this alternate water supply, and they'll have had very little funds into the mix, to make this happen. Am I wrong, or I just want to make sure that I have the proper perspective on that?
So let me answer. Can I answer that one if I can? Because this is an extremely complicated blending, but I'm going to do a big picture. And I really think this conversation would be best suited anyway at the commission meeting, because it's a good opportunity to make a public forum. So I'm glad you asked the question now. But you have to think about this as a total pool of water that we're all working as a regional cooperative to develop. This is one of the projects. Winter Haven's developing a project in the Winter Haven area. We have a southeast well field. I do oil all the time, so if I do that Monday, please correct me. Well field, water field that is being developed as well. And so when you look at this, it's not that these are the percentages that they're going to consume. And in fact, what it means is these are participants voluntarily by city in those numbers to participate in our project. And knowing that if we're going to preserve that 10 million gallons a day that this provides for ultimately by 2045, that it takes this amount of time to get this water wells developed and a huge price tag of $171 million, while other areas are doing that also. And then we're looking at as a group of how does that water move together. Pricing will be a consideration on this as we go along, incrementing how much we allocate of the 10 million that we may not need on a shorter term period of time might be part of that consideration as we go along, and what the reimbursements look like. Very complicated. Participants have to be voluntary, and it isn't going to mean that they get this percentage of that water for their area and that they're guessing well, because the reality is we may not need any of that 10 million gallons per day by 2045. But if we don't have it ready and developed, we couldn't, there's no way we in the short term could make it available. So it's a very complicated subject, and I think probably reserves a Monday response. But as a big picture, we have to all think about this. This is not necessarily that this water goes from our well right to their city in that proportion. It's that we create this pool together, that we protect the area together, that SWIFMA says as a region, this is an allocation that is justifiable.
And just to follow up on that, as far as the procedural process, this is a bottom-up process, not a top-down process. So the PRWC did not assign these percentages. These are percentages that each jurisdiction has voluntarily signed up for, based on what their estimations of their needs are. So these are all voluntary numbers.
Is that helpful, Commissioner?
Yes, absolutely. I just would love on Monday for Bill Anderson or someone from the water, since it'll be, our citizens paying the bill. I think it is important for them to know what this number that we voluntarily submitted to pay for.
Well, and we haven't done any of those allocations later, that come. So, and that's going to be true for the whole cooperative. For how do we all turn around and assign the costs of the development for the cooperative locally and responsibly? much of which is going to be determined in the future. So the protection today is having the water. So it is making sure we put ourselves in a position for growth. And I think when we look at Florida and the center of the state as a target, we have every reason to expect we're going to have a tremendous amount of growth pressure. Would be foolish to do otherwise when we know some of these projects take 10 years to get in place and active. And then we'll be able to allocate the water costs accordingly later, but we can't do it today. So it would be great to have him maybe open this up, Palmer, too, after you have read it with an explanation and an overview, and then Chad and I could kick in on any roundouts with respect to PRWC.
Okay, and then one other aspect of this is, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, there's also the Southeast Wellfield project that's being developed, and the city at the present time doesn't think that it will need any water from that, but we are suggesting that we participate in that project as well and request 0.1 MGD of water from that project. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One, that will allow us to participate in decisions that are being made for the development of that project. And two, the way these implementation agreements are structured is that if you don't sign up at the beginning to get into the project, you're going to have to pay a surcharge. So you'd have to pay the proportionate share of your costs for all the design that has occurred up to the point that you join, plus a 7.5% surcharge of those costs. So these agreements are designed to incentivize parties to sign up at the beginning. So by signing up for a 0.1 MGD, that gets us a seat at the table and will allow us to avoid that surcharge. And you'll see in the allocation table in the memo that several jurisdictions have opted for that approach with our project as well. Armandale and Winter Haven are both signed up for 0.1 MGD with our project. So we're recommending that as well.
Which I would agree, I think is very wise. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you shared, as of course as answering, of course, what Commissioner Madden had concerns, or making sure that we make sure our public residents are aware of. But if I heard Mr. Palmer Davis correctly, did you say, Mr. Davis, that if we do not get the grant or funding does not come forward to help support the percentage that would be needed, this particular situation will not move forward? Is that correct?
That's correct. That's a condition of the effectiveness of the agreement.
Okay, and I think that's important to be shared as well, as Mayor and you, Commissioner McLeod, may give us information on Monday when we have this particular agenda item discussed. Thank you.
Yes, and that's very material, Commissioner Walker, so I'm glad you re-mentioned that. Any other questions on this item? All right, then if we look at the agenda, we have really run through it, short of any announcements any of you would like to make. Who would like to go first in that category? Seeing none, I'd encourage you, if you can. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Walker, go ahead.
But I just want to make sure that my colleagues are aware, and I think I had one or two of you all that did share with me after I made the announcement that you have the time is open, as I think I made the announcement during our last commission meeting, where you can make application for the 5 legislative policy committees that you can that you may want to join or be a part of for FLC for the upcoming year, as we move into another session, as it would be come session 22, fiscal calendar year 22, excuse me. So again, I would ask if you're interested and want to be a part of any of those legislative policy committees, of course, it's time to make application now. Applications are being taken up through sometime in May. I forget that date, but you can go on the website and find that date, because meetings will begin June and July. There'll be a meeting in June, a meeting in July, as you approach the I guess we call committee week for the for our legislature in November, as they start making those assignments and all committee assignments. And as you all know, because it's election year next year. Session will begin in January. So again, if you care to be a part of that process, I encourage at least getting a couple of us involved with the Legislative Policy Committee's assignments as well. So we'll make sure you're aware of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, Commissioner Madden?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say how exciting it was to go to the Vermont Place grand opening and ribbon cutting, and to see, that a building that had been, a place of ill repute and, just looked like it had been left abandoned for so many years, has now been well loved by city, private dollars, our nonprofit, Talbot House, all working together. And I just think that is really where the magic happens, is when government can leverage their funds and work alongside people who have a heart for our homeless population, who are in the trenches every day, think that those making change, in the hearts and lives of people, and to residents are so excited to move into those units, and they'll have services from Talbot House. Brenda Redout, get up there in her own special way. It just was very inspiring and very exciting to see that dream realized. And, that segues into, our budget meetings for next week, and just really feeling hopeful and optimistic about our future, and to really think about the great providence and blessing that the city of Lakeland has to be able to go into our budget cycle after a year-long global pandemic and not think that all we're going to be faced with are massive cuts and devastating, news, but instead, are feeling the wind beneath our wings, that we have opportunity to hope and plan and dream for the future. And I think that I'm hopeful that we're going to have a lot of discussion about the American Rescue Act funds and how we can best use those. And of course, going to the Vermont Place really did make me think that we were on a roll here with leveraging our dollars and getting those affordable housing units for our citizens. And I hope that the American Rescue Act dollars can add to that success.
Thank you. And it was wonderful to see the private citizens too, who were there, who had helped to support that effort as well. And that is precisely what we want to see happening. And it is a very, very great celebration. And what I love too is not only is Dr. Redout celebrating what took place on that ribbon cutting or the grand opening, but that she's then talking about other land across the street and over here and down there for next, so that the visionaries that want to make this happen and want to recapture those lost areas and make them whole again have that kind of passion. So I agree with your comments very much. And I didn't make a point of it, but one of those donors that was there that helped to make that happen, that was Barney Barnett, and it was his birthday. But if you tell him, if you say that publicly in moments like that, he gets very, he gets embarrassed. So I held back, but it was wonderful to see quietly how he has appreciated helping to be a participant in making those things happen. Any other comments by commissioners?
I want maybe just to piggyback on what you just said, Mr. Mayor, and of course not to have a long conversation about it, but there was an organization who had made mention of an area that they thought they needed some love, as we call it, and needed some particular attention. And I was happy to be in this meeting when the announcement was made about where they thought they would go to support the area. And I made sure I shared with them that I thought the area that they were leaning toward providing support, which was pretty much somewhere of the North Lake, we call it North Lake Wire neighborhood, did not need that kind of support because of what was already in place with what we have through the Dream Center and All Saints Episcopal Church, that they should move to an area that you just mentioned, Commissioner Madden, which is just north of Memorial on Vermont and on those side streets there between Memorial and Garden. That is an area that really needs some support. And I shared with that particular organization that they should partner with maybe the Dream Center to help some get some much needed love or care in that particular area between Vermont, Gilmore, and Stella, right there, just north of Memorial, as you go just north of where Vermont Place is. So I thought I'd make sure I mention it to you all because I hope they would just do that because they were inclined to go to an area where I believe we already have the attention drawn and have a partnership situation already in place as well. So thank you for mentioning that, Commissioner Madden.
Any other comments by commissioners? Thank you very much for your time. If there are none, then we are adjourned. As a note, if you have the immediate ability to be at Bonnet Springs Park by 10:30, it would be, or 10:15, 10:30 today, it would be fun to have you there.